Tom Brady, Sean Payton, and Dolphins owner Stephen Ross had a brilliant scheme planned that was going to somehow bring Tom Brady and Sean Payton to the Miami Dolphins for the 2022 season. Unfortunately, it all completely fell apart. And some of that blame for it falling apart somehow, some way goes back on Bill Belichick. It was a very intricate plan that has been reported that Tom Brady had. Tom Brady was going to retire from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like we saw him do. Sean Payton was going to resign from the New Orleans Saints, and then Tom Brady was going to take an executive job for the Dolphins and get a stake as a minority owner from Stephen Ross. That way, once Tampa Bay moved on at quarterback and brought somebody new in, Tom Brady was going to announce that he wanted to come back to football, and because of that, he would try to kind of force the Buccaneers to trade him away to the Dolphins so he could play in Miami. This, in a way, does show a little bit more context as to why Miami fired Brian Flores. If you remember when Flores got fired, everybody said it didn't make any sense, and it didn't make any sense. Brian Flores was kind of on the come up. He was doing the right things in Miami. It made no sense to actually fire him, but instead Miami did, and now we kind of know why, because they wanted to bring in Sean Payton to come in with Tom Brady. But ultimately, that decision to fire Brian Flores ruined the entire plan. Brian Flores, after he was fired from Miami, ended up alleging racial discrimination, which would end up in a big court case, and because of that, it opened up the potential of an investigation into Stephen Ross, and with that comes looking at Stephen Ross's phone records, cell phone, different communication, and that would obviously show what they were planning. And what they were planning was hiring a white head coach without even going through the Rooney Rule. I'm sure they would have gone through the Rooney Rule in some way, but not technically had gone through it the correct way. And because of that, they obviously could have gotten in trouble. And because of that, Stephen Ross and Tom Brady had to shut the entire thing down, and this big elaborate plan kind of went to waste. And that's just what the Dolphins had to do, and instead, they moved on. They moved on and hired Mike McDaniel. Technically, nobody can really get in trouble for this whole mess because it didn't actually happen. If anything, it was just hearsay, and of course they can find alleged text messages of everything, but nothing actually happened. And if everything would have gone the way that Tom Brady wanted it to happen, he'd be playing in Miami in 2022. It makes sense. He reportedly had some tension with Bruce Arians, and looking back on Bruce Arians, I have to wonder maybe if that had something to do with him moving into a front office job, because Arians ended up moving into a front office job after Tom Brady had already decided to come back. So you have to wonder if Joel Glazer had that conversation with Tom Brady about the potential, they were butting heads and Brady wanted to come back to Tampa Bay, and maybe he just didn't want to play for Bruce Arians. Another reason why this did kind of make sense for Brady want to try to jump ship for Miami is that Stephen Ross was going to give him the opportunity to be a minority owner. And Tom Brady, I have to assume, with his love and passion for football, he wants to stay around the sport, whether that's coaching or being in a front office or staying on the field like he's now going to be doing at around 46 years old. I have to imagine that being potentially with the Dolphins for the rest of his life as an owner was a big enough deal for him to want to consider this. Plus, we all know Stephen Ross would have loved to stick it to the Patriots by bringing in Tom Brady, and that would obviously give Dolphins fans something to cheer about. Watching a guy like Tom Brady, who dominated them for decades, now come and play for them. It's also worth pointing out that Tom Brady's actually friends with Bruce Beal, who is the successor to Stephen Ross as the owner of the Miami Dolphins. Beal and Brady have attended the Kentucky Derby together, and Brady even went to one of his very nice birthday parties not that long ago. Plus, Brady was building a $20 million mansion in Miami. This all makes perfect sense. Sean Payton also makes a lot of sense in this whole plan. Him and Brady have known each other for a long time. They have a very, very long-standing relationship of almost 2 decades. And remember, Tom Brady did want to join the Saints when he was a free agent leaving New England, but Drew Brees decided to return for another season, and that kind of delayed the entire thing. The wording of both Tom Brady and Sean Payton's announcements were very suspect. Payton said that he intended to coach again, and Brady said that he didn't want to make a competitive commitment anymore. Those two things have to make me think that it was very, very scripted and calculated the way they had thought that through. Because those two announcements sound like somebody that could potentially come back, and Payton even said explicitly that he would want to come back. Speaking more on the announcement, it was also reported that Tom Brady didn't thank the Patriots in his goodbye letter. Like we all know, and this was a huge blow-up thing, was that Brady never said thank you to the Patriots when he said goodbye and retired from the NFL. And it was reported that that was because that at the time he was planning on playing them twice a year for the Miami Dolphins. So that kind of adds a little more context to that. And it makes more sense why he wouldn't directly go out and thank the Patriots, because he was, in a way, about to turn around and stab them in the back and have to play them. What's really crazy about this is that if you remember, the whole Flores lawsuit happened because Bill Belichick accidentally texted him congratulations on the Giants job when in fact he meant Brian Daboll. But it was an accident. Or was it an accident? Belichick, whether he meant to or not, ruined the Dolphins and Brady's master plan. And I can't help but think and just look back and wonder if maybe Bill Belichick had gotten some kind of wind of Brady and the Dolphins' plans and went out of his way to see if he could just completely destroy it. And if that was his plan, it totally worked, and it was kind of one last laugh for Bill Belichick. After the plan fell apart, Brady kind of had a big decision to make there. He was obviously planning on coming back and playing for the Dolphins. Now he had to find out if he did just want to no longer play and retire, which it sounds like he really wanted to return to the field, or if he wanted to return and play for the Buccaneers. And obviously, that's what he ended up doing. He ended up going to a Manchester United game in the United Kingdom, where he told the Buccaneers owner, Joel Glazer, that he wanted to return. Glazer also owns Manchester United, so he went to that game. They talked, and I have to imagine that that's maybe when they had a conversation about Bruce Arians too, and the potential of him moving into a front office role. It's also worth pointing out here that Tom Brady has 1 year left on his contract in Tampa Bay. He did at one point say he wanted to play till 50 years old. That very well could be true. And if that's what he wants to do, it sounds like he maybe won't all be in Tampa Bay. I completely expect the Brady to Miami rumors to heat back up next offseason, or even potentially Brady to the 49ers, the team he grew up rooting for. Just because this shot at Tom Brady going to the Miami Dolphins didn't work, doesn't mean that it won't in 2023.